fighting a guerrilla war against the British. So he would essentially harry the fly line. He would attack, outliers, he would attack scouts, patrol, stuff like that, and very rarely engage in direct combat. And ironically enough, pretty much every time he did, he lost. Which says, so we're talking vastly different types of warfare, we're talking vastly different types of leadership, and the times when each side would come in to force him to a fight. And which general is better? It's really not as simple as even when how they quantify it in the show for the simulation, the X factors. Because the fighting was so different. The circumstances completely different. The enemies they were fighting fought differently. Napoleon, France, Prussians, he fought basically everyone on the fucking stuff in Spanish. Their guy Napoleon didn't fucking fight. But they were actually managing to talk about the different circumstances and the strengths that each general brought to the table, whereas, Washington was a very ingenious, improvisational guy who mainly made himself a pest. And basically, here's Washington, his objectives were not the same as Napoleon's during the Revolution. Napoleon was out to basically conquer. Okay, Washington and every army, every one of the armies for the colonials, that was not their goal. It wasn't even an option. You're dealing with much more limited resources, much fewer guys. They were really trying to, at best, promote kind of a stalemate, or at least they were trying to stretch out the conflict for as long as possible, because they knew the British were not interested in a prolonged conflict. They couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford to keep sending guys for probably what was already a very unpopular war. So really, for the Americans, it was just about going for business, about making it as costly and as frustrating a prolonged war as one could get. They weren't really in this to win, so much as to in this to get the British to just kind of give up, if that makes sense. So dominance was not an option here. Now the French, Napoleon's forces, they were out to fucking steamroll. That was, they took over, they called themselves Emperor for life. And he was dealing with a much larger force of guys, so he was essentially a fucking sledgehammer that he would use for pounding the cement down. That's not saying he didn't have any kind of style, that's not saying he didn't have any kind of leadership or generalship. He did. And that was actually very well illustrated when they were talking about this really famous battle, where he essentially lured the Russians into a false sense of security and lured them into an ambush, which actually kind of made him be kind of a treacherous little shit, but hey, he's French, so that's it. So then they start talking about the X factors for each general. I think they talked about, they rated them on a scale of 1 to 100. And then they would program that. They said that we're taking into account all sorts of stuff. We're taking into account intimidation, ingenuity, what else? I forget the abilities. They said tactics, endurance, aggression. What else? Anyway, very long story, slightly less long. They start rating them. So what's funny was they basically were very even. And so they were like both around the 70s pretty much all the time for everything. And Napoleon was of course like a veteran general, but then they were like endurance. No. Well, Washington, he had valley forts, he had 6 troops, and the French didn't have to deal with that. So Washington, his endurance is 4 points higher. He's a 76, and Napoleon's a 72. So, basically, they're pulling these numbers right out of their ass. The simulation, even though it takes into account more factors, it's still, when you get down to it, kind of arbitrary, you know? I really don't like this idea of a simulation, because you can tell me anything. I don't know what this thing does. You know, you have these numbers programmed in, and I don't know what the formulas are. I don't really care, but I kind of do, you know? You basically threw this data in a computer and hit the button. You know, and you let it churn for a half hour, and then it gave you an answer. How? I don't know. Well, it was really funny how they were kind of evaluating their various attributes, you know, the ruthlessness, endurance, generalship, and they started talking about Napoleon, and so they go to Napoleon, and they go, Napoleon when he his ruthlessness was unparalleled. Everyone was afraid of this motherfucker. And they go, why? Well, for instance, he was willing to make any sacrifice. He would throw away, to accomplish his objective, he would consider anyone expendable. He would throw people away with nothing. But he would win. He would win, damn it. Like when he invaded Russia. Like, again, I'm probably really embarrassing myself. Already I admit, my grasp on history is not the best. My memory's not that good. I've already forgotten the name of that really famous battle Napoleon fought. I've already forgotten pretty much everything. Some things I know. I know Napoleon was exiled to Elba and then escaped to revolution. But I don't remember the name of these fights. But one thing I do remember is that when Napoleon invaded Russia, he led 500,000 troops in there, and they pretty much all fucking died. Because as ruthless and as willing to make sacrifice as Napoleon was, and he did, he lost. He was forced into retreat with like 20,000 guys, something like that, out of the 500,000. His ruthlessness was pretty much shown up as a joke compared to the Russians, who show you what the meaning of loss is. Those Russians are fucking crazy. They have consistently shown in pretty much every prolonged conflict they've been in, they will choke you with the bones of their dead in order to at least make it. If you're going to beat the Russians, you will have to crawl over every single one of their dead bodies. As illustrated in places like Stalingrad, World War II, every time the Russians invaded, that's pretty much what happened to the Russians when Napoleon invaded. That's what they call slash and burn. They basically threw everything they had against them in a constant fighting retreat, destroying and pillaging their own land as they retreated to make sure that Napoleon might have taken the ground, but he was going to starve and die for every step of Russian land he took. And he did. So they were talking, basically what I'm saying is, they were playing up Napoleon's attack of Russia as if it was a really good thing. Like, they're like, we saw how ruthless and stubborn he was to fight when he invaded Russia. They're like, well, yeah, we thought he was stubborn. We thought he was pretty ruthless. Not all that smart in that case, though. In fact, we kind of thought he was pretty impatient. He attacked Russia in winter. How'd that work out for you, Napoleon? Not really. And again, what's even funnier is they bring this up later on, as they're talking about why Napoleon's why his generalship value is like only 76, when he's widely regarded as one of the greatest generals of all time. They're like, well, why is his rating so low? And then the guy programming goes, well, he did invade Russia in winter. And they go, oh yeah, Yeah. Yeah, that was dumb.